I'm Ron Burgundy, joined with my co-host, Tits McGee. Is that cool?
People are going to think we messed up again. We were an early listener last week. Josh uploaded the wrong file, so it was just his creepy breathing for a few seconds and then him messing up 3 times before he got the intro right.
Now let's dive in. Welcome to another Q&A day. Sorry we're a bit late. It's been nuts over here, but we are going to kick it off and dive right in.
All right, first question from our Facebook group. How do you get to zone 2 while running? I am staying around zone 4 to 5, which I know is not good. Do I need to walk/run? Am I pushing myself too much? This is a very common struggle and question, especially now that running is having its moment. A lot of people are figuring out what zone 2 is. Zone 2 is essentially your conversational pace or a easy pace. And I put easy in air quotes because it's not easy for most. I actually think it's harder for a lot of people because most people are out when they go for a run. They're either running as hard and as fast as they can, and they're typically in zone 3 or even zone 4 for all of their runs. The issue with that is that doesn't allow us to actually build our aerobic capacity, build that aerobic base. So you eventually hit a plateau where you're not getting any faster and you're not able to run any further than wherever you are. So with zone 2 and training our bodies to do most of our runs in zone 2, we allow ourselves to build that aerobic capacity, build up to more mileage or to run a little bit faster at this easy conversational pace. So if you are not in zone 2, and you can figure out if you're in zone 2 or not based on heart rate. So that's one way of doing it.
It's about 60 to 70%.
Yeah, but it's not the most accurate. Number one, because most people are using wrist-based heart rate monitors, which are not super accurate compared to like wearing a chest strap. So a chest strap would be a little bit better, but also there can be some variances in individualities when figuring out where your heart rate percentages are, because when you figure out your max heart rate, for example, your target heart rate, 220 minus your age. That's your max heart rate, 220 minus your age.
Multiplied.
It's a very general calculation, like just how we don't love a macro calculation that is like very by the book and not factoring in anything else.
It's just an easy starting point.
It is. It's fine. It's totally fine. But along with that, just if you can run at this pace and have a conversation without gasping for air every other word, you're probably in your zone 2 pace. So if you can easily talk to someone or sing throughout the duration of your run, you're likely in zone 2. So if you are having trouble staying there, you do probably need to do some kind of walk run, either slow it down a lot. It's going to almost feel awkward at first because you're going to be like, I'm barely moving. I'm moving at a snail's pace. I'm not used to this. If you're used to running in that zone 3, zone 4, it's going to feel really weird. But again, we want to focus on the benefits here. So slow it down to a walk if you have to until your heart rate comes down a little bit, until you can converse comfortably, and then start running again. Over time, your walks will become shorter and your run distance will be longer. But it does take time. It's not going to be something that happens in a matter of weeks. It could take a few months before you really get into a good groove with being able to run at zone 2 and actually stay there.
I will say I'm your typical zone 3, zone 4 runner, and having put a emphasis on bring that back down to staying primarily in zone 2, it's actually really enjoyable. Like I don't love cardio, but it's been really nice weather, so I'm just soaking that in.
Roll the tape back to the episode where Josh said he hates running.
I do hate running. I think it's very boring, but it has been enjoyable because the weather has been so perfect to get out there and make it super easy pace. I'm not going very long. It's 20 or 30 minutes. But I've enjoyed it. It's been less awkward and more like, okay, I can do this.
I think a lot of people would enjoy running more if they approached it this way. So anyway, that's how you make sure you stay in zone 2. I do cover this in our running section of the app. I have it's kind of like a mini ebook guide of just like frequently asked running questions, how to figure out certain things and where your paces should be and all that. So know that that's there as well.
We should put a branded Evolve Hybrid version of that into Evolve Hybrid, so it's just sitting there.
Let us know if you want a branded version of that with maybe some extras, Evolve Hybrid people. All right. Nutrition related question from Mia, who is one of our app members. I'm Italian. I grew up in a house where you had to finish what was on your plate, and my entire day revolved around what we would eat and when. Fast forward to adulthood, I eat based more on habit rather than hunger. How do I break that? Any tips? It's a total mindset shift for sure, and my biggest hurdle. As a fellow Italian who still has a father who revolves his whole day around
that
food.
Guy.
I can relate to this, and it wasn't necessarily to the point where we had to finish our plate as a kid, but food is a big part of our culture and of what we focused on at all family gatherings and holidays and events. I think a lot of you guys would be very surprised to see what a typical birthday party looks like with our dessert table at the Daniele household. It's insane. There's literally like 15 desserts for 10 people. But I can relate to this, and you're right. It is totally a mindset shift. I would say a good place to start is tracking your macros, just to kind of get that baseline knowledge and education of how much you're actually eating right now. And then kind of steering yourself back away from that and relying on hunger. So just get in the practice of listening and tuning into your body and asking yourself, am I actually hungry right now? Or is this something that I'm just in habit mode with? Simply taking that pause and that second to ask yourself before you act is going to be huge. And let's kind of go over what are the true signs of hunger.
Well, just to take a step back for a second, you could also just look at your plate. If you're going to clean that plate, prioritize portion sizes while it's on your plate. So think about that. But actual hunger, you're asking for a cue?
So I think a lot of people confuse cravings with hunger. And hunger, like physical signs of hunger, your stomach is growling. You have that very empty feeling. You may be slightly lightheaded. You haven't eaten a meal in 3-4 hours. You probably notice those true hunger signals. So it will be individual based on what you're doing right now. But I would say start there and kind of just, even if you don't even track anything right now, and just get in the habit of taking that pause before you act and go make food. That's going to be probably the easiest and best thing that you can do first.
To that point too, I know this is a tangent on the question, but try to minimize snacking between those meals. Utilize those meals as your powerhouse. So protein, plant, balanced carbs and fats, however you want, but really space at least 3 hours apart between each meal, because that growling is actually a mechanism within your stomach where you're sweeping a bunch of dead cells out. And if you're not going that 3 hour minimum, that's really the minimum where it might start to happen. And you don't need to feel it growling, but that's part of it. If you're not going that minimum of 3 hours, that's not happening. And that's where we tend to see this increased instances of SIBO, so small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, because we're not sweeping those dead cells. So a lot of that bad bacteria is able to kind of feed on that consistently, as opposed to your body doing what it typically does when you enter that fasted state. So one little side tangent, if you are snacking throughout the day, it'd be a good idea to stop as far as maximizing overall health, keeping energy up, utilizing your fuel properly, giving your digestive system that cycle that it needs.
All right. What is your advice to improve sleep hygiene when you work shift work and you're going to bed, waking up at the same, and going to bed and waking up at the same time every day isn't an option?
You want to focus on controlling the controllables. I know that's very general, but a few things you could focus on that you have in your control are things like blackout shades. So, if you need to fall asleep when the sun is still out, it's light out, utilizing those blackout shades, avoiding technology an hour before bed. Same kind of concept as if you're going to sleep at a normal time. Not eating a few hours before bed. If you can swing that, again, that depends on your funky schedule.
Caffeine, make sure you're monitoring when you're having that. That's going to impact sleep for sure.
Sleep mask as well on top of the blackout shades, calming music. Just kind of shift the things that would settle you down before bed at your normal time. Utilize those things and just be smart about when that last sip of caffeine is again and that last meal. Those are two things that can make a big difference.
Mindset for running. What do you think about when you're running? I've never ran for long times or distances, and I'm loving it, but I don't know what to do with my brain when I run other than think about how long until I'm done. I found some good music playlists, but how do I get my mind to let go and think about anything other than the fact that I'm running and have X time or X distance left? Hope that makes sense. Yeah, it makes total sense. I think that for me, what has helped me, I actually am not a music listener typically when I run. I'll sometimes do it, but I really prefer listening to a podcast or listening to an audiobook or something that really just takes me away from what I'm actually doing. And I will say I am kind of a weird person that enjoys just running in silence. It's kind of almost meditative for me. I can kind of...
That's the stuff of serial killers. Like driving without the radio on.
Like let my mind wander. And I know that's not something a lot of people agree with and enjoy. But I would say find a podcast, get Audible, download some audiobooks, like use that to kind of distract you. You can also, if you're wearing long sleeves, just cover up your watch or put a sticker over your watch so you're not like obsessively checking that. But it's definitely something that takes practice. And there are days where I am checking my watch more often than others. But if I'm distracted by a good podcast, it definitely goes by a lot faster.
It's also your time to think. So if you're listening to that podcast and it's some type of personal development podcast or business podcast, like I don't particularly love being on my phone, but I'll have an idea, a thought, pause that. I'm taking notes throughout it. When you're moving, you think more clearly. A lot of times that's us on a walk or us taking a hike or whatever. But a lot of times that does happen if I'm listening to a podcast on that run, just jotting notes and things I can revisit when I get back.
All right. Last question from the Facebook group. What is your opinion on artificial sweeteners? I would say our opinion here has shifted a little bit over the years. At least mine, maybe not yours, but
it depends on the source, what it is. I think
it
feeling
depends.
Pretty good with stevia, and then
they're not something that we're like, oh my gosh, we will not consume these and they're toxic. The dose makes it poison, as with everything, but at the same time, we don't like look for them to be in what we're consuming either. I would say the issue most people have with artificial sweeteners is that they can be really disruptive to your digestive system. Most people just don't digest them well. Even stevia can be just really hard for some people. So I don't know. I'm indifferent. It's not something I'm like fearful of. It's not something I'm actively seeking out and like, this is great. I'm going to include these in my day. But it is what it is.
I mean, Whole Foods don't come with artificial sweeteners.
Right.
So
most of our food is whole food based.
So if that's your case, guys, primarily whole foods, what you're consuming, the occasional processed food, highly processed food, everything's processed. The occasional highly processed food with some small amount of artificial sweeteners, if it's not throwing your stomach off immediately, it's going to be fine. So we're not fear mongering. At the same time, we're not endorsing it.
All right. These are from our anonymous question box. Let's see. Recently postpartum, returning to lifting soon. I understand staying in maintenance for a while for milk supply and strength gain, but is there ever a situation where you'd recommend going into a short deficit after the first 3 months to lose a little bit of extra fat gain during pregnancy? Yeah, I mean, I don't think I've ever said don't do it after the first 3 months. You definitely don't want to do it before 3 months. I would say 3 months is probably like the sweet spot because those first 3 months are what a lot of people refer to as the fourth trimester, where you're still healing. Obviously, milk supply is coming in and regulating. So you don't want to be in a deficit before then. I would say if all else is in alignment and feeling good, your biofeedback is as good as it can be at that time, you're sleeping decently, stress is managed, you're tracking macros consistently at maintenance and being successful there, sure, then yeah, if that piece of the puzzle fits that stage of life, I'm all for it. But I would say that's probably not the common thing that most people are going through at 3 months postpartum. There's still a lot of changes going on. So it really depends. I would say if all of your ducks are in a row, then go for it. But if not, it's okay to take more time. And just because you're not in a deficit doesn't mean that you're not going to be losing or having that body recomposition either. I didn't do any kind of deficit with Cora intentionally. I did not do a fat loss phase, and my body changed completely just by doing the basics, by focusing on eating at maintenance, fueling my body well, making sure my protein was where it needed to be, fiber, hydrating, working out, slowly increasing what I was doing there. So you can make progress in maintenance. Don't forget that. You're going to think this one's funny. Will Josh ever be creating an Amazon storefront or LTK page? He would be a fantastic resource for the men and women, especially with the holidays coming up.
LTK?
It's like where people link their outfits.
Outfits? You want to know where I get my outfits?
They want to know where you
That is the first time in my life anybody has ever wondered where I got my outfits. Yeah, I'm not a style guy. I bought my first pair of Jordans this past year. I'm not a sneakerhead. I'm not an outfit guy. I don't have a lot of resources.
I mean, I think you dress nicely. Like, you dress with nice active wear, and like you look, it's not like you're dressing like Adam Sandler every day over here. Like, you have clothes that are nice. All right, he probably will not ever do this, but what are like your top 3 brands, I guess, that you wear?
That's evolving because I used to like Young LA. I do not like what they've been putting out lately. I don't think. This fly is going to kill me.
I told you to
Got
kill
one
the fly
doing
before
laps
the
in
podcast.
Young LA, I've kind of shifted from. Like their original stuff a little better. Like, what am I wearing now? It's mostly Lululemon and Vuori.
Yeah,
to be honest, just
that's both of us.
Non-branded, comfortable athleisure apparel.
It looks good out of the gym and is easy to wear in the gym.
That said, too, like the reason I wanted to talk about an apparel brand, not about apparel brands, but our apparel brand, is I don't like how a lot of stuff has shifted. Like there are very few things I actually like in the style anymore. So we'll put a pin in that one. But Vuori, Lululemon, and Built Basics.
I was going to say
for
Built.
For some regular shirts.
All right, last one of the day. How high should your heart rate get during training? I'm assuming they mean during lifting. I want to switch to more strength-based training, but it seems so low intensity and I barely sweat. This one comes up a lot, surprisingly.
How close are you to failure, especially on leg day? Like your heart rate could spike pretty high.
But listen,
on a high rep leg day.
It is not the goal of strength training is not to get your heart rate up and keep it up the whole time.
Agreed.
That is not the goal. The goal of strength training is not to sweat a lot. Sweating a lot just means that your body's regulating its core temperature. Some people sweat more than others. It doesn't mean you're losing body fat from it. It doesn't mean you're seeing better progress because you sweat more. That literally does not matter. True or false?
True.
So I think first and foremost, you have to separate that mindset of I'm going to work out and sweat a lot and get my heart rate up the whole time and feel like death after.
You want your heart rate coming back down before you even start the next set. So there should be a pretty quick recovery there.
So
that said, you're going to be feeling it significantly more doing a set of heavy squats versus a set of, seated bicep curls. So it's going to depend, but intensity is a factor there. So if you're noticing your heart rate doesn't increase at all, you're probably not going anywhere near failure.
Yeah.
So that's just something to pay attention to. Not that that's an indicator of how close you are to failure. It's just one thing to think about is if you're not bumping up at all,
if you
can probably go farther.
If you don't feel like you just worked hard for those last few reps, then you need to add more weight.
Our scale, so RPE, say it's a 9, is 1 rep short of absolute failure. That's not it's hard right now. It means I could do 1 more rep and that's it. A 10 out of 10 means you went to failure. You couldn't do another rep if your life depended on it. So you need to be that accurate with it. And that's something a lot of people underestimate. They think they're at a 7 or they think they're at an 8 and really it's like a 4.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could have done 6 more hard, slow reps. We're not counting that. We're not thinking about that because A, we haven't gone to true failure, and B, it's just hard. So we'd like to stop.
Yeah. So if you truly want to figure out if you're lifting at the right intensity, go to true failure on a couple exercises today. You won't know what it is until you try it. I think that was one of the benefits and perks of something that powerlifting taught me is actually going to my max on those lifts and figuring out what my body was truly capable of, because then it allowed me to push in every other lift. Even if it wasn't one of the powerlifting lifts, I pushed so much harder throughout my workouts. So don't be afraid to have like a test week and just see what you're capable of and then adjust things from there. But I would say that's probably the most common thing that people are just not doing right when it comes to strength training, is not lifting at the right intensity.
Especially if you have a high volume program, and this is a trap I always fell into. So I have 10 more sets. Like I don't have to kill it on this one, or I just don't feel like it, or I literally can't because I'm going to go fucking jump out a window if I kill it on every single set for the next 10 sets. That's why I think I've had so much success with Evolve Hybrid. That's why I think those of you who just started it are enjoying it so much. The sets, the overall volume is so much lower, so you can absolutely crush it, and then you're rejuvenated because you're on to the next one and you're in and out in a very short period of time. So you kill it, but it's not overkill. You're not wasting a bunch of junk sets and a bunch of time, because that alone is going to be a huge factor in your overall level of fatigue, your cumulative fatigue in that workout over time. So minimizing that allows you to recover really, really well, get into that next workout and feel great and see progress much more efficiently. So this is something I wish I started doing a long time ago. I am thrilled that we're into this now. And that's why I can balance a lot more cardio and lifting and see better progress performance-wise and aesthetically as I factor in significantly more cardio, because overall fatigue is much more balanced.
Yeah. All right. We are going to wrap it up there for this week. Remember, there's a little link in the description of all of our Q&A episodes if you want to submit an anonymous question. If you're in the Facebook group, we try to post on there on Wednesdays or Thursdays just to get your questions there. So don't miss out there either. But we're happy to help in any way we can. So where can they find you?
I'm at Josh Skutnik.
I'm at Alessandra Skutnik, and everything else you need is linked in the show notes.